Here's more wrestling news for August 29th, 2021. And your headlines for this afternoon include Bray Wyatt Fiend Christmas Funko Pops dropping after his WWE release, AEW canceled planned Dynamite match after 2 positive COVID-19 tests, Tony Khan avoids question about Daniel Bryan joining AEW, Mandy Leone on how ROH was responsible for the formation of AEW, Jim Ross expected to transition out of full-time AEW announcer role, You Really Stepped Up, Vince McMahon rewarded star with world title win for working despite severe injury, Goldberg really choked his son Gage at SummerSlam for not selling, gives a major update on his injury, and more. We're starting off today with Bray Wyatt, who was released last month by WWE. As one of the company's most popular stars, Wyatt was no stranger to being on WWE merchandise, and now fans can grab one last Funko Pop vinyl based on the Fiend. The Christmas Fiend was part of a Walmart exclusive contract for Funko, who had to fulfill their contract, and these pops are fetching around $40 each on eBay. If you can find one in the shops, it'll set you back $13, and the price is likely to explode around the holidays. Wyatt may be gone from WWE, but there's still Fiend merchandise on WWEshop.com, and now fans can purchase this festive Fiend mere months after the character disappeared from WWE. Over to AEW. As for the past year, and to this day, AEW has taken the situation very seriously, and that led to 2 wrestlers being pulled from TV this week. In the Wrestling Observer newsletter, it's reported that 2 wrestlers tested positive for C19, and AEW chose to scrap the match they were going to have, which hadn't been advertised ahead of Dynamite. Vaccinations will help people avoid getting infected, but they can't guarantee a 100% immunity, which is why it's so important for everyone to do their part in the long road back to normalcy. We're not sure who tested positive, but it led to their match being canceled this week, and we're sending them our best wishes as they recover following this positive test. One person expected on Dynamite real soon is Daniel Bryan, who's rumored to be joining AEW at September 5th's All Out event. Neither Bryan nor AEW have confirmed if the former WWE World Heavyweight Champion will be there, but there's been plenty of teases both on and off screen. When Tony Khan appeared on Wrestling Observer Radio recently, it wasn't long before Dave Meltzer asked about Bryan's status, and the AEW president coyly avoided answering. I can't answer that question, but I mean, it's fair for you to answer that question, but it's not something I can address on the Observer today, but it's fair of you to ask it, but he's one of the all-time greats. Khan used a similar tactic when he was asked about CM Punk joining AEW, and we all know that it led to Punk's epic debut on last week's Rampage. After losing to Universal Champion Roman Reigns on the April 30th SmackDown, Bryan hasn't been seen since, but it may just be a matter of time before yet another huge WWE name calls AEW home. Ring of Honor news now, as the company has never matched the heights of WWE or Impact Wrestling, but they do have their own spot in the wrestling landscape. After all, many of WWE's top names started off in ROH, and the promotion is responsible for changing the entire wrestling landscape, according to wrestler Mandy Leone. Speaking to the Wrestling Epicenter, Leone discussed the origins of AEW and how ROH was responsible for All In, the 2018 show that preceded the announcement of AEW. I think what a lot of people don't realize is that Ring of Honor produced All In almost entirely, so the start of AEW and that whole brand, in my eyes, was helped by Ring of Honor. A lot of the guys that were here went there, and they're doing great. Speaking about the proverbial Forbidden Door, which has seen AEW, Impact, and NWA talent work together, Leone said the situation is different for ROH, though she doesn't see anything wrong with working with other companies, but for now, they're focusing on their own product. Whether or not ROH works with other promotions remains to be seen, but Leone is confident in AEW's growth, and what they need to be seen is on par with AEW or WWE. She said, "We are not on cable television that is as easily accessible as WWE or AEW. If we were, I have no doubt we would be number one. No doubt. When it comes to Ring of Honor, we focus on pure wrestling. We focus on wrestling, 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 and a little less on the entertainment. We have a good mix." It's possible that ROH could one day receive a huge TV deal that'll allow them to compete with WWE and AEW. But deal or no deal, Mandy Leone is sure that the promotion she's with is the best of them all. Back to AEW next, as Jim Ross was one of the company's first big signings, as his status as a commentating legend immediately made AEW seem like a big deal. JR may be the greatest commentator ever, but that doesn't mean he can't mess up, as he's previously referred to Kenny Omega as the WWE Champion and called AEW's flagship show WWE Dynamite. Now JR's role in AEW is changing, as Ringside News reports that he'll no longer be a full-time announcer for the company. That doesn't mean he's gone completely, as he'll still be used for big matches and major events, and a source in AEW has added that Ross will be used more backstage for interview segments. It's also said that the decision was JR's call, and it's expected that guest announcers such as Chris Jericho, Mark Henry, and Paul White will fill in for him on Dynamite. JR signed a 3-year contract with AEW in 2019, meaning he'll be 70 years old when his current deal expires next April, and after decades of calling action on a weekly basis, the best of all time has earned a lighter schedule. One man who's used to JR calling his matches is Kurt Angle, as it was the Oklahoma native who called Angle's first WWF title win at No Mercy 2000. Just 11 months after his WWF debut, Angle's win was a huge deal for him, and it was only helped after his performance 2 months prior at SummerSlam. On his podcast, Angle called his SummerSlam 2000 main event between himself, Triple H, and then WWF champion The Rock as the match that made him a superstar, especially as he continued in the match after suffering a legitimate concussion during a botched table spot. That spot led to Angle's head bouncing off the concrete, and the next day at Raw, Kurt was praised by Vince McMahon, who told him, "You really stepped up for me last night." Within 2 months, Angle was the WWF champion, dethroning the Brahma Bull at No Mercy, thanks in part to the toughness he showed working through a concussion at SummerSlam. Back to the present, and at this year's SummerSlam, Bill Goldberg lost to WWE champion Bobby Lashley after the ref said Goldberg couldn't continue, but it's what happened after the match that fans remember. Post-match, Goldberg's son Gage got in the ring and got a hurt lock for his troubles, and his father really wanted to make sure his son sold his injuries. Speaking to CarCast, Goldberg admitted that he was a bit rough on his son after seeing Gage smiling after being attacked by the almighty WWE champion. He said, "I was choking him." He goes, "Dad, when you came over and grabbed me, you were choking me." I was like, "I saw you smiling, man. I had to get the smile off." The kid is impervious to pressure. Gage may have found the experience at SummerSlam fun, but his father wanted to make sure that Lashley's finisher looked devastating, and we're sure the 15-year-old will know better the next time he wants to smile after receiving an on-screen beating. And we're ending with more Goldberg news, as he's provided fans with an update on his condition. The match at SummerSlam ended abruptly because of an injury to the Hall of Famer's leg, and in that same interview with CarCast, Goldberg discussed the injury, saying, "I'm dazed and confused and continually limp." With a 2-match-a-year contract to his name, Goldberg isn't expected to wrestle for the rest of this year, and has just 2 matches left before his current contract expires. Goldberg is just the latest name to be toppled by Lashley, who's also beaten The Miz, Drew McIntyre, Braun Strowman, and Kofi Kingston in his impressive title reign, leaving fans wondering who's next for the almighty WWE Champion.